Why Man City sued the Premier League over APT rules and how it could impact 115 hearing. Manchester City took the Premier League to court in a bid to overturn associated party transaction rules. Manchester City have been successful in their legal challenge over the Premier League regarding the league's associated party transaction rules. City launched the legal action in a bid to overturn the APT rules they believed were unlawful, and learned on Monday that they have been successful after a trial over the summer. The victory was damning against the Premier League, and is expected to lead to a change in the rules regarding sponsorships. The case was entirely separate to the current hearing in front of an independent panel where City are defending themselves in the face of 115 charges for alleged breaches of the Premier League's financial rules. What was City's argument? The APT rules were introduced after Newcastle's 2021 takeover, aimed to prevent sponsorship deals being agreed by associated parties that are above fair market value. City claimed the rules were against competition law, as well as claiming they were discriminatory to clubs with ties to the Gulf region and clubs that are based outside of London. The club also were said to have claimed damages for the money they missed out on since the rules were introduced. APT rules were tightened in February this year. It is believed 12 clubs voted for it, 6 against and 2 abstained. Following a full review of the existing associated party transactions rules and fair market value assessment protocols, clubs agreed to a series of amendments to further enhance the efficiency and accuracy of the system, the league said in a statement. The APT trial began in June and lasted for 2 weeks. What was the verdict? In a damning verdict, not only did the tribunal decide that the Premier League rules breached competition law and are therefore legally void, it found that the Premier League was specifically unfair in how it had applied the rules to City. What happens next? Can the Premier League appeal? The Premier League claimed the result was a success of their own, and endorsed the overall objectives, framework and decision-making of the APT system. The league continued, moreover, the tribunal found that the rules are necessary in order for the league's financial controls to be effective. The decision represents an important and detailed assessment of the APT rules, which ensure clubs are not able to benefit from commercial deals or reductions in costs that are not at fair market value, FMV, by virtue of relationships with associated parties. The statement says the Premier League will continue to operate the existing APT system, taking into account the findings made by the tribunal. It is thought the verdict cannot be appealed. However, City can now claim for damages for losses after the verdict, as can other clubs for the same reasons. Monday's verdict will have no bearing on the hearing currently taking place regarding the 115 charges, in the sense that they are 2 completely different cases being heard by 2 completely different authorities. However, having proven the APT rules are unlawful, City will feel their defense in the 115 charges case is boosted, as many of the charges relate to sponsorships and whether City disguised genuine details of their revenues. While the case may not significantly influence the arbitration hearing currently ongoing around the 115 charges, any evidence of poor governing by the Premier League will help City to further their argument that an independent regulator is needed. It has been alleged that City concealed payments made by their owner Sheikh Mansour through third parties and disguised them as sponsorship revenue, which in itself was inflated. City have denied any wrongdoing relating to the 115 charges. A decision on the 115 charges is expected in the new year. Breaking Man City inflict huge defeat on an unlawful Premier League in APT legal challenge. Manchester City challenged the legality of associated party transaction rules brought in and tightened by the Premier League. Manchester City won a substantial victory against the Premier League after a panel deemed both current and original associated party transaction (APT) rules to be unlawful. City brought the unprecedented challenge to the league over its APT rules after claiming them to be discriminatory and bad for business. Brought in months after Newcastle's takeover in 2021, and then made even stricter in 2023, the Blues argued that the Premier League's political motivations for bringing the rules in clouded them to the reality that it was a poor decision commercially. As has been the case with the more serious Premier League charges City are facing, an arbitration hearing was held in front of an independent panel but behind closed doors for both sides to put their argument. After 2 weeks of debate, the verdict has now been written up and released, and it does not make pleasant reading for the league. While the case may not significantly influence the arbitration hearing currently ongoing around the 115 charges, any evidence of poor governing by the Premier League will help City to further their argument that an independent regulator is needed. Conversely, any weakening of the Premier League's position will make the Blues even more unpopular with the group of clubs that are backing the league. Man City and Premier League issue statements after bombshell legal verdict. Manchester City have issued a statement following the publication of the report of their arbitration hearing with the Premier League. Manchester City have welcomed the finding of an arbitration panel after chalking up a significant victory over the Premier League over sponsorship rules. The Blues challenged the Premier League over its increasingly tight regulating of associated party transaction rules that were pushed through in 2021, months after Newcastle United's takeover. Despite the changes over the last few years being agreed by the majority of clubs, an arbitration hearing in June agreed with City that the new rules did not make sense and must be addressed. The implementation of both the original association party transaction rules in 2021 and subsequent amendments were deemed to be unlawful, and the tribunal found that the league's treatment of City in two separate deals was procedurally unfair. On top of this, there were unreasonable delays behind the decisions. The club has succeeded with its claim. The associated party transaction (APT) rules have been found to be unlawful, and the Premier League's decisions on two specific MCFC sponsorship transactions have been set aside. The tribunal found that both the original APT rules and the current, amended, APT rules violate UK competition law and violate the requirements of procedural fairness. The Premier League was found to have abused its dominant position. The tribunal has determined both that the rules are structurally unfair and that the Premier League was specifically unfair in how it applied those rules to the club in practice. The rules were found to be discriminatory in how they operate because they deliberately excluded shareholder loans. As well as these general findings on legality, the tribunal has set aside specific decisions of the Premier League to restate the fair market value of two transactions entered into by the club. The tribunal held that the Premier League had reached the decisions in a procedurally unfair manner.